What to do when stopped for a DWI in Texas? This is really a great question, and there's a lot of things to talk about on this, but the main thing is don't answer any questions. That's the first mistake most people make, and that is the biggest mistake. You know, there's a kind of a joke that our clients have the right to remain silent, but very few have the ability. So when you get pulled over for, say, investigation of DWI, one of the first things that happens is the officer starts asking you questions. And the first thing you should do is say, I invoke my right to remain silent. And that cannot be used against you. That cannot make your situation any worse. Now, the mistake that a lot of people make is they answer questions. Say the officer asks, so have you been drinking? And the person says, well, yeah, I've had a couple of drinks. Well, you know, from that point forward, their situation has been made worse because now the officer has no question that they have alcohol in their system. They've admitted it. And so that is used against them, and likely it's going to lead to further detention and request for doing field sobriety tests and so on. So if you don't answer that question, then the officer can't use any answer against you, and the officer may not have evidence that you've been drinking. Sometimes they think they smell alcohol, sometimes they don't, they just ask the question, okay? So they may think that they may at that point think, well, I don't really smell alcohol. They haven't admitted having anything to drink, so I don't know if I have any further reason to detain the person. But the next thing that can happen is the officer may ask you to step out of the car. Okay, now at this point, you need to obey the officer's direction that you step out of the car, okay? But the next thing that's going to happen, likely, is the officer's going to ask you to perform some field sobriety tests. For instance, the horizontal gaze and nystagmus, hocus pocus, I say, where they have you follow the pen or finger, or the walk the line test, or the stand on one leg test. Okay, now you should probably refuse to do those tests because nobody passes those tests. Here's a little secret. All the officers who do the training to learn how to give those tests to people on the side of the road, they all fail the test when they do it for the first time. Everybody does it unless they've practiced it before, okay? So you're not going to do well on those tests, and there's going to be a lot of things that happen that the officer is going to use against you. So the best thing to do is to refuse to perform those field sobriety tests. Now, here's a little secret tip that most people wouldn't think of, and that is, say, officer, I'll take a portable breath test right now. Now, I wouldn't recommend that you do that if you've had too much to drink. But if you've been responsible, you've only had a couple of drinks with dinner at the restaurant, then you're likely not intoxicated. You likely have not consumed enough to be over 0.08 or to not have the normal use of mental or physical faculties. So you can say, officer, I'll take a portable breath test right now. Now here's the interesting thing about that. Most officers don't have the portable breath test, so they won't be able to give it to you. But even if they give it to you and you fail it, the result can't be used against you in a court of law. So, but if the result is low, it's below the legal limit, then that may be used in your favor to be released at the scene. So you may have, the officer probably won't give it to you, but even if it does, it may help, and it in the long run can't hurt you. Now it may, if the result is over 0.08, the officer may use that as a reason to arrest you, but at that point he was probably going to arrest you anyway. So, but then you could also say, well, an officer, am I free to go? And the officer will probably say, no, I'm detaining you for investigation, or maybe at that point they place you under arrest. Now, once they place you under arrest, do not consent to a breath test or a blood test, okay? Breath tests are wildly inaccurate, and you can fail those tests even when you're not intoxicated or over the legal limit. And blood tests are quite often wrong. There's a lot of mistakes that can be made in blood testing, and there's a lot of reasons why the tests aren't reliable, and we can attack those blood tests as being unreliable. So refuse the blood test. Now, the officer may get a warrant to have your blood drawn, but if they get a warrant, quite often that warrant is legally insufficient. It is based on an affidavit that doesn't sufficiently state probable cause within the four corners of that affidavit. And so quite often that blood test can be attacked because it's based on an illegally issued warrant, and so the result can't be used against you. But if you consent to the blood test, then they can use it against you no matter what. So those are some of the best tips for what to do if you're detained or stopped for driving while intoxicated in Texas.